politicals out there in the tubosphere. Welcome to the Polit'Ai, where the center left meets the center right. What do I mean by that? When you strip away the positive and the negative, or the negative and the positive, you are left with common centricity. Common sense, center, centricity, you get what I'm saying. Alright, so until I can find a flesh and blood Republican around here who's right of center, because I'm somewhat right of center, but a little more left of center, but I'm still a centrist. Our co-host is going to be an over 100-year-old from the Meiji Restoration period. It was depicted quite well in The Last Samurai, of which some of you may have heard of. Ken Watanabe playing Katsumoto was a real figure. The final clash between the last vestiges of the daimyo period in Japan, the samurai, and Emperor Meiji, who realized that we got to get up to speed with the European powers. The beginning of which, as you may recall, may have been depicted in Shogun quite well when Richard Chamberlain was the man on point. So this statue, being a music box doll, I like to think of more as a representation of that period, which it's from. We're always going to start off with a little bit of a humorous clip. I'm not ever going to know which show from MSNBC this is going to come up from, except to say this show is copyright to the Polit'Ai, with brief video highlights courtesy to MSNBC or NBC News. The OMSR. Yeah, we're doing this show from the same stage of the OMSR, which you may have never seen. That's not important. The Polit'Ai does not own these video highlights, but does own all of the other original content and the overall concept herein thereof. Therefore, down AJ, most rights reserved. Alright. Humorous clip. 1, roll.
National security. So we're constantly probing and working on that issue. The more engaged we are, the more we'll be in a position to make sure that that we are encouraging the most moderate, thoughtful elements of the opposition that are committed to inclusion, observance of human rights, and working cooperatively with us over the long term. All right? Thank you very much.
Most of the conversation you said one half of the on the tax side. On the spending, the $1.2 trillion figure, is that something that you could see having a short-term postponement, or is there nothing to make you say half?
That was a great question, but it would be a horrible precedent for me to answer your question just because you yelled it out. So, thank you very much, guys.
President Obama concluding his first news conference since re-election. You hear the president actually refusing to answer the final question, saying it would set a horrible precedent since the journalist chose to yell the question out without the president acknowledging him. But a lot is
perhaps an understatement. The resignation of General David Petraeus as CIA director hangs another question mark over America's intelligence community and foreign policy leadership. With Petraeus out, the president could tap his chief counterterrorism advisor, John O'Brennan, to take over at the CIA. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has insisted she will serve for one term and one term only, meaning she will be vacating her post come January. The White House is reportedly leaning towards U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Susan Rice, to replace Clinton at Foggy Bottom, though Rice's confirmation is far from assured, given the ongoing questions surrounding her handling of the attacks in Benghazi. Adding to this, Defense Secretary Leon Panetta has made it clear he is ready for retirement. Senator John Kerry, who's been eyeing the Secretary of State position, may be asked to replace Panetta if he is not chosen to replace Clinton. Adding to the high-stakes game of musical chairs, General Allen's confirmation hearing to lead NATO has been put on hold. During the campaign, President Obama called for nation building at home in his second term. He'll need to start by rebuilding his own team. John Heilman, you were a guest on the very first show of this program, so I will go to you first in a poetic circle. There is a lot happening inside the president's inner leadership circle. How much of a problem do you think this is for him?
Well, first of all, let's tarry for a moment on I was been doing some math. 8,760. That's the number for today. 8,760 hours.
Wow.
Since Alex Wagner took over that chair. And ever since the
subjected America
ever since then, root beer has flowed from the water fountains here at 30 Rock.
It's true.
And there has not been a cloudy day.
And the recess has been extended, I believe, by 15 minutes.
That's correct. It's all just been...
You're welcome, America, at 30 Rock.
It's all been lollipops and sunshine ever since then. So congratulations on 8,760 hours in that seat, and good luck on the next 8,760 hours.
That is very generous.
So this show is a review of the reviews, as it were. Been watching politics for 10 years. This is my manifestation of trying to make real the idea of blogosphere.com back in 2004. Yeah, that was me. Didn't do anything with it. Went and joined the law firm. Alright, and you may notice that a lot of the reviews, well, it seems to be quite oriented towards MSNBC. Well, there's a reason for that. One, we get to keep alive the Keith Olbermann tradition of paperwork in your camera face. But seriously, more importantly, MSNBC is the only cable news network that I know of and have seen. And I used to watch Fox News quite a bit years ago, when blogosphere was in my mind, and I wrote many a treatise on the current issues going on back then. But they are the only network, MSNBC, again, whom has, or that has, Republicans on point. Scarborough country until the Imus debacle. Now he's on in the morning, and that's like, 3 to 6 in the morning here, Pacific time, so I don't get to see him as much. But you got S.A. per se, better be careful, per se, on the cycle, and they have plenty of Republican guests on it. They even used to have Laura Ingraham and Ann Coulter on there. This is MSNBC. That's why we cover them. All right. So they're on every day. They have such great material. My intent is to try to bring these things to you, in case you missed them, for posterity's sake. And so you may be asking, well, the Tai Chi, well, you're not demonstrating martial arts. No, the Tai Chi martial art came long after the Tai Chi. The symbol of yin and yang, the origin of yin and yang is right here, the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. I wholeheartedly recommend it as reading for anybody of any faith, because it's the only book that's given me peace. And it's not so much a religious or organized religion kind of a book. It's more of a spiritual, philosophical guideline as to how to get along with everyone and everything in the universe. Alright, so I've set it up. So at the end of each show, I'm going to try to read a bit of wisdom from the Tao Te Ching, and also quote something from myself that represents the right of center, since she can't talk, because a lot of times MSNBC does represent the left of center, or just the slightly left of center viewpoint. The only Republican talking points you might get is vis-a-vis the guests. So I'm going to prove that I'm a little bit right of center and present things to you such as it may come up.
Chuck Todd, NBC News political director, chief White House correspondent. So, Chuck, it was a question of would the fiscal cliff be the #1 conversation piece after this news conference? Would it be Petraeus? It turns out, at least when you look at some of the traffic online, it is the president's response to questions about Susan Rice and criticism leveled at her from Lindsey Graham, Senator John McCain, and Susan Collins.
Well, I can tell you, I know this White House has been very frustrated with John McCain and Lindsey Graham on the Benghazi issue for quite some time, and I think you could tell the president almost was looking forward to that question, if you will. I know that there's a lot of personal irritation, if you will, in the West Wing over Susan Rice being used as a scapegoat. A lot of loyalty to Susan Rice around here, particularly among the campaign 2008 veteran. Susan Rice was a big part of the president's 2008 campaign, and so I think that's where this personal defensive streak comes in with the president and Susan Rice. Add in this, just let's not pretend it's a great relationship. The president, John McCain has been not always come across as the most magnanimous when it comes to the president, and I think now there's more becoming a two-way issue between the president and John McCain. Maybe not surprising, considering that they were former rivals for the presidency, but you could tell that this has got a personal there's a personal nature to this back and forth, Cameron. But there's two other pieces of news out of this presser. Number one, the president left himself room on tax rates. On the negotiations, we know what he wants. He wants the tax rates to rise on the fiscal cliff for the top 2%. But he left himself an opening, some wiggle room. Maybe it doesn't have to be the full 39% rise. Maybe it's somewhere in the middle. He is willing, he is showing openness. I've already heard from Republicans who were very pleased with that answer, if you will. And then on the second thing, I thought the distance that he was choosing to have from the Petraeus investigation was something worth marking there. A couple of chances, and he really tried to keep his distance from the entire episode.
Also, as well, the language the president chose to use regarding immigration and the GOP's recognition since this election that the Latino vote in this country, it represents so much more, especially now, as the president said, you see Latino voters showing up and taking this civic responsibility and showing that they have power in their vote.
Well, that's right, and Tamron, it's no accident. I think he wanted to make sure that he believes that Hispanic media should be more prominent role here at the White House. Remember, the president decides, he calls on people, and he made sure that Telemundo, our colleagues, and I think it's great. I'm glad Lori was right up in there, but I think that's also a tacit acknowledgement. He knows how he won the state of Florida. He knows how he won. Perhaps you could credit the victory in Virginia to that. He knows how important the Hispanic vote was to his coalition in winning re-election. And, you know, at this point, I think we'll know. I'll be shocked if we don't see comprehensive immigration reform signed into law before summer of next year. I'll be shocked if it doesn't happen
You're
that quickly.
absolutely right, Chuck, and we're both from states with a high number of Latino voters and high population. But it's interesting as well when you've got Lindsey Graham, I believe it was on the Sunday morning program, says that he is ready to run out the door, basically, to tackle immigration reform. So here the president before was being so hard fought on things like the DREAM Act. He now has a GOP that's, if you want to use the language, beaten into submission through sheer numbers and acknowledgement that he can pull over to his side here.
Yeah, look, it's going to be 85 votes. I've always said in the Senate, you watch, when this thing happens, it will be a rush. You will have a majority of the Republicans will end up signing on to the bill that is negotiated between Lindsey Graham and Chuck Schumer. The two of them have already talked about this. We know the White House has involvement in this. It's going to happen, and it's going to happen with remarkable speed. But sometimes the ballot box does speak.
Quickly, Chuck, I just want to read this to you. Senator Lindsey Graham has made a new statement in response to President Obama's comments about Benghazi and Ambassador Rice. In part, it says, Chuck, Mr. President, don't think for 1 minute I don't hold you ultimately responsible for Benghazi. I think you failed as Commander-in-Chief before, during, and after the attack. Obviously trying to use language or toughness, if you will, to match what the President basically said today. If you've got a problem, come to me.
Well, that's right. I mean, this is one of those, this is Lindsey Graham jumping into the fray in this one. I think it guarantees that you will see this could be an exchange of rhetoric that might not go away anytime soon. And we do know this is a week of some private hearings between the intel community and the Senate and House congressional leaders. But I can tell you what really irks the White House on this specific issue of Benghazi and Susan Rice is the exact same intelligence reports that Susan Rice was getting, that the White House was getting, was also the same intelligence reports that Congress was getting. And that's why there is this personal irritation, if you will, from the president and from others in his national security team who feel as if it's clear the intelligence was not good at the time, but nobody realized it at the time.